It's carb season. As the year winds down and temperatures get colder for a lot of us, we tend to start eating more and more comfort food. Creamy soups, lots of warm baked goods, or in today's case, pasta. Chicken Alfredo is an American classic loved by adults and kids alike, and I decided to make it because I had to cook for like 15 to 20 people, and to me this is a very scalable recipe. So yeah, I just decided to do a big pot of chicken Alfredo and a lot of garlic bread. This recipe isn't wild or super special by any means, but I do have some tips in here for cooking for a lot of people. I have had some requests for that, so this would be a good vessel to start talking about it. So yeah, let's get into what I did. So like any chicken Alfredo, this starts with chicken, and I'm using a lot of chicken breast. I always keep tons of these lengthwise sliced cutlets in my freezer. That is, I take a chicken breast and then slice it in half across, and then I just pound it under some plastic wrap, or in my case, I have the vacuum bags from thawing these, so I use those. You just want them in even thickness so that they all cook evenly, and for my big pot of 15 to 20 servings, I have 4 to 4.5 pounds or 2 kilograms of chicken breast here. To impart some nice flavor into our pasta, I'm going to make some blackening seasoning so we can blacken the chicken breast. I also try to keep a container of this in my pantry because I use it a lot. I don't measure anything here, but it's roughly 2 parts of smoked paprika to 1 part everything else. And the everything else consists of garlic powder, onion powder, thyme, basil, oregano, marjarom, and black pepper. I keep my salt separate from my rubs because I like to season my food directly with that to keep it more precise. Which, speaking of, I'm going to salt all my chicken breasts first, and then I'm going to add my blackening seasoning. And while I was doing this, I was getting my grill ready outside because that's the fastest way to cook a lot of meat. I just dumped a full chimney of lit coals into my Big Joe, and once that was at searing temperatures, I just laid all my chicken breasts one by one onto the grates. In hindsight, I should have put some oil on my chicken breasts before seasoning them because that would make them sear better on the grill, but that's okay. These only took a few minutes because they were so thin and the grill was so hot. I always use a thermometer to be exact, and I pulled these around 155 Fahrenheit. Once they're done, just let them rest for like 5 to 10 minutes on a cutting board, and then you can slice them into thin strips, or you can cube them up however you like to put them in your pasta. In the meantime, this is my very simple Alfredo sauce. I'm adding 3 sticks or 340 grams of unsalted butter to my Dutch oven, just letting those melt over medium heat before I add in my cheese. And the cheese I use is very important. It's the authentic parmigiano reggiano from Italy. I always stress this, that even though this is very expensive cheese, the taste benefits are far worth it, in my opinion. You can get these at most grocery stores, or you can get them in bulkier sizes at Sam's or Costco. But for this amount of food, I'm going to shred up a whole pound or about 450 grams of Parmesan. And trust me, you're going to need that workout for what you're about to eat. So I add that in bit by bit into my pot while stirring to let each portion emulsify. It would coagulate more easily if you added it all in at once. And for a while, this is going to look pretty ugly and look like it's going to stay broken, but just stick with the process because the amount of cheese we're using is going to be enough for this amount of butter. Once it's all in there and you've stirred it enough, you should have this really nice and creamy white sauce, which if you feel like it needs more emulsification, you can use some pasta water. Yeah, I forgot to mention that I had a large stock pot of boiling water that I added a lot of salt to, followed by 3 pounds of dry fettucine. And when that was close to finishing, I grabbed a measuring cup and just stole a lot of the pasta water to help my sauce. The starch in the sauce is going to help your emulsification, so add a little bit of that at a time and stir that together. And when your pasta's done, you can add all that in too. Using some tongs, just take your time and toss all that together until all of your pasta is coated. And yeah, this is a heavily debated topic about using heavy cream in Italian dishes like this, but this is a more American dish anyway, and I don't see a problem with using it because it does make things taste better, and it can also be another tool to help emulsify your sauce if you need it. I added some here to boost up the volume of what I was making, and it turned out great. At this point, you can taste things and add more salt or Parmesan cheese if you feel like it's necessary, but that's about it. You can dump in your chopped chicken here and toss that together. I continued adding more pasta water to help this loosen up, and I ended up serving mine more than an hour later, so I just kept it covered and added more water right before serving. This is definitely best served fresh as it does start to dry up and coagulate a bit as it sits, but it's not the end of the world. Oh, and for a pop of color, you can add in some chopped Italian parsley if you like, but that's pretty much it. There's not much to making this dish, which is how I like it when I'm trying to cook for a lot of people. Yeah, pasta is just a great way to feed a crowd. And of course, what's your chicken Alfredo without its sidekick, garlic bread? This is even easier to make, so let's do it. I grabbed 2 loaves of French bread, which they sell together at Sam's for pretty cheap, and I'm using a serrated knife to carefully slice an even line across both of them. That way you have 4 big loaf halves. And now to make the luscious spreadable garlic butter, I'm using a food processor since it's such a big portion, and I'm adding in 2 sticks or 227 grams of softened butter. It needs to be fully softened to room temperature, so pull it out several hours before you're doing this. And for this amount of butter, I'd say use like 8 to 10 garlic cloves, which I've just chopped the butts off first.
Garlic butts are for the bin.
And then very roughly chopped into smaller chunks to help the food processor. Then I'm doing a small handful or about 30 grams of that shredded Parmigiano Reggiano. Then I like to season mine with some dried oregano and a little bit of crushed red pepper for spice. I also do a little glug of olive oil because it tastes good and I think it helps the butter spread better. I'm just going to whip that up until it's homogeneous, and then I'll toss in a handful of chopped Italian parsley. I like to add this in after whipping the butter because I don't want it to get cut up too much. And using a rubber spatula, I'm just going to disperse all that garlic butter over our bread. By the way, I'm using one of these industrial sized baking sheets that I use for my king cake. I think they're very useful, so I'll link this one below. I pop that into my oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 180 C for about 8 to 10 minutes, or once that garlic butter is nicely melted and the edges are starting to crisp. And then you could just eat it like this, but I don't think I mentioned this is garlic cheesy bread. The cheese is just going to take this to another level. So I'm using a pound or 450 grams of low moisture mozzarella, which again, I always shred my own cheeses myself because they don't have those anti-caking agents on them. It's non-negotiable. But just spread that again all over your bread, and this time when you pop it back into the oven, it should be on the high broiler setting. Just keep it moving around to keep the browning even. This can take anywhere from like 5 to 10 minutes. Just pull it out when you get some nice browning on the cheese. I was actually in a rush, so I didn't get to brown this as much as I would have liked to, but that's okay. I just chopped this up into my serving size portions, and that's it. I also sprinkled some Parmesan on top afterwards, which I should have done right after the mozzarella before I broiled it, but obviously I forgot. And same with the extra parsley. I would put that on top of the mozz before we broil. Either way, that's a pretty sick looking cheesy garlic bread that your guests are going to enjoy. I could have done a salad with this, but who needs that? And like I said, I was in such a rush that I had no time to do a taste test of this, but rest assured that it came out great, and I fed I think like 18 people with this, but I had a good bit of leftovers to eat the next few days. So even if you don't make this exact recipe, just know that pasta dishes are really easy to scale up for large crowds, as well as something like garlic bread. But if you enjoyed this, let me know, or let me know what else you'd like to see me make. As always, thank you all for watching, be blessed, and I'll see y'all next time. Now let's get this bread.